A much-awaited court ruling this week on the legality of the abortion pill Mifepristone, used in more than half of the abortions in America. The three-judge panel from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans has spoken. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. Ruling in a complicated case that has gone up to the Supreme Court once already, the Fifth Circuit panel agreed to reinstate some limits to the drug Mifepristone, limits that will not take effect until the Supreme Court settles this case. Beyond the future of chemical abortions, the ruling could have wide-ranging implications for the Food and Drug Administration's authority. The lawsuit, brought by the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine alongside other groups and doctors, claims Mifepristone is unsafe for women and makes technical arguments to assert that the Food and Drug Administration skipped proper procedures and ignored its own research and testing standards when approving the drug. The Justice Department, representing the FDA, says the drug went through rigorous scientific testing before it was approved more than 20 years ago. The panel ruled that the plaintiffs waited too long to challenge the approval of Mifepristone in the year 2000, but that they could legally challenge changes the FDA made to the drug's use and administration in 2016, 2019, and 2021. In 2016, the FDA extended the use of the abortion pill from 7 weeks of pregnancy to 10. It also removed 2 of 3 required office visits and allowed non-doctors to prescribe the drug. In 2019, it approved a generic form, and in 2021, new guidelines allowed Mifepristone to be sent through the mail and prescribed via telemedicine. With this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, the court would keep Mifepristone legal, but reinstate the original limits in place prior to 2016, with use at 7 weeks maximum, required in-person doctor visits, and prohibiting it from being sent through the mail or prescribed via telemedicine. Despite the Fifth Circuit's ruling, there will be no change in how the pills are distributed right now, because last April the U.S. Supreme Court put lower court rulings on hold while litigation continues. The Justice Department said it will appeal Wednesday's decision to the Supreme Court. The justices are likely to revisit the issue in 2024, months before a presidential election in which abortion promises to be a motivating factor for many. Aaron Hawley, senior counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the pro-life doctors, reacted to Wednesday's ruling, saying the FDA's unprecedented and unlawful actions did not reflect scientific judgment, but rather revealed politically driven decisions to push a dangerous drug regimen. Predictably, the reaction was very different from those who favor abortion access. Vice President Kamala Harris criticized the Fifth Circuit decision in a statement released on Wednesday. This lawsuit is a threat to a woman's freedom and makes decisions about her own body and another step towards the ultimate goal of a nationwide abortion ban. It endangers our entire system of drug approval and regulations by undermining the independent expert judgment of the FDA. The Biden-Harris administration will continue our efforts to protect access to abortion and defend the FDA in the courts. For expert analysis of the Fifth Circuit's decision and what's likely next for the abortion pill in the courts, we turn to attorney Mary FioRito. She's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a senior advisor of its Catholic Women's Forum. Mary, it's so great to have you back. You know the history of Mifepristone and the Population Council, the group that lobbied the FDA to bring abortion pills from France to the U.S. What went wrong in that process that then caused this litigation?
Well, that was very much a rushed process that took place in 2000. It was in the waning days of the Clinton administration. And as you note, Montse, the population control groups from France wanted these drugs to come into the United States. But the only way to get a drug like that approved was to use an expedited process that applies specifically to medical conditions that are life-threatening. So pregnancy had to be redefined as a life-threatening condition in order for the normal safety protocols to be ignored and for the drug to go right to market without really taking a good long look at the possible implications for it on women's health.
So this decision then from the Fifth Circuit leaned into the regulatory and administrative problems, lots of legal jargon with the way that this was approved. What does that then mean? How could that impact the FDA's authority in the future? That's something that has been coming out of Planned Parenthood and a couple of other groups.
Well, I think it's hurt the FDA's reputation. I mean, the point was made several times during the oral arguments that the FDA was acting in a political manner rather than in a medical manner. They were not taking into consideration the real effects of these abortion drugs, not only on women's physical health, but also on their psychological health, because as you know, in this particular type of abortion, the woman often passes the baby's remains at home. And also, as well, she is the moral agent in the abortion. So she is taking the abortion pill rather than the abortion being performed on her in a surgical way. And we see the FDA just sidestepping all of these very real dangers and concerns about the pill. And particularly when we're dealing with minors, we have no idea what the impact of these drugs could be on a young developing girl's body if she takes them. And so they sidestepped all of that because it was the political will of the Clinton administration and those in the abortion industry who wanted those drugs on the market, whether or not they hurt women or didn't hurt them. So it has a real long-term impact, I think, on how Americans are going to look at the FDA. I think, you see some suspect feelings already because of things that happened around COVID. And I think this just adds another layer to how people feel about the FDA and how it's publicly perceived.
That's right. And we'll get to those reporting requirements in 1 second. But the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or APLOG, was also a plaintiff in this case and said it was impacted by the approval of the later use of this drug, so later in the pregnancy, because as doctors, they might have to complete abortion when these pills fail. The court didn't accept this, and they're considering appealing this part of the ruling. Do you think the Supreme Court will reconsider?
Well, I hope that they do, because I happen to know doctors myself personally, at least 3 doctors that I know that I have spoken to who have had to complete abortions from the abortion pill, not completely emptying the uterus. And what that entails then is a doctor who's on call in the emergency room, who doesn't do abortions, who hasn't been trained in doing abortions, and who ethically opposes being involved in any way in abortion. They essentially have to clean up the mess left behind when these pills don't work as they're supposed to. When it was initially approved, the RU486, the abortion drug, was only approved up till 49 days of pregnancy. And then it was expanded by the FDA, again, without any studies to indicate whether or not that would be dangerous, up to 70 days. And as we have learned, the later in pregnancy you use this drug, the more likely the chances are that the unborn child's remains will not pass at home as they are intended to. And so a woman can develop a very bad infection called sepsis. She will have severe abdominal pain and cramping, and then will usually go to an emergency room, right? She doesn't go back to the abortion doctor to be cared for. She'll show up in the emergency room, and that puts life-affirming pro-life doctors in a terrible position. They're not morally responsible because they did not give the drugs to this particular person to end her pregnancy, but they are still involved, and they have to remove the remains of those child. That's incredibly traumatizing.
Yes.
I think for anybody, but especially for doctors who have stated oppositions to participating in this kind of medicine.
That's right. Well, really quickly, right now, there doesn't seem to be a path to banning Mifepristone, at least not with this case. What is the most that this case could achieve going back to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think what we can achieve is to make sure that if the drug is going to remain legal, that first of all, we'll know specifically how many women are harmed by it each year, that there will be specific reporting requirements put back in place, not just to report women who have died. And there've been 29 deaths that we know of, and there's probably many more, but actually that these injuries are coded properly, that they're not coded as miscarriages, that they are coded as failed abortions, so that we'll know exactly what this drug is doing to the women who take it. Secondly, I think reducing the amount of time from 70 days back down to 49 days. And then also, I think we need to put safeguards back in place that will protect women from being coerced into taking this drug, or from the drug being slipped into something that they're eating or they're drinking. We saw this happen in Great Britain when they decided to make their drugs available. They called it pill by post. Mm-hmm. And they've actually pulled back on that tremendously because of the number of women who reported that they were tricked into taking the drug that they didn't even know they were taking it. So there's tremendous potential for abuse here and for harm to women. And at least, again, it's certainly I would rather it be outlawed altogether. But if we can't have that, then at least put the guardrails up so that it doesn't continue to damage women and that the public knows exactly what they're dealing with when they say that they have abortions available in pill form, do-it-yourself abortions. It's much more strenuous
and dangerous
rigorous
than people
study
know.
needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back as this case continues.
Thank you for having me, Montse.